Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss one of the array question which is frequently asked in various interviews of the product companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. So it's a very fairly simple question again, and we'll go through the question and we'll discuss the various approaches to solve this particular question. So the question is, find the smallest and the second smallest element in an array. So the first question you should ask your interviewer is, what are the elements present in the array? Like it can be negative, it can be positive, or it can be both, or it can be decimals. So for simplicity, let's take an example of all the positives. So let's suppose we have an unorganized array, like which is not sorted. And we are also making sure that the array doesn't contain duplicates. So the assumptions we have taken is the array contains positive numbers and array doesn't contain duplicates. So the first thing which should come to your mind is how to get the smallest and the second smallest element. The fairly simple solution which comes to your mind naturally is, why don't we sort an array? So if we sort an array, we obviously have the first and second element, as in the smallest and the second smallest element. So as in brute force approach, you can say that's a fairly simple solution to this problem. So the first step will be sort the array in ascending order. So and return the first and second element. But if you see the complexity, the time complexity of the solution, it would be n of log n, because so if you use any of the sorting algorithms, it will take minimum of n log n time, where n is the number of elements. So the time complexity for this is and space complexity will be constant, because we are not using any of extra spaces. So the interviewer will definitely ask you to optimize it, and here when the abilities of your optimization will be tested. So the brute force solution is like fairly simple, anyone would give you. So what separates you from other candidate is the optimized solution. So the first thing which should come to your mind is, so by any chance we cannot reduce the complexity to less than n, because we have to anyway might transverse the whole array, because the smallest element can be the last element of the array. So by any chance, by our intuition, we know that it can't be the less than O of n. So by that intuition, we can refer that one of the solutions can be, we just transverse the array and we find the smallest element. Now, the second time when I traverse the array, we should get an element which has the minimum difference from the first already getted smallest element. So let me give you an example. So for the given array, which is takes an input, if I, in the first traversal, uh, will get the smallest element as 1. Now if I do the second traversal, I know the I know the my answer would be the element where the minimum difference, the difference between the element and the smallest element is minimum. So yeah, so if I go through this array, 2 minus 1 is equal to 1, 27 minus 1 is equal to 26, 43 minus 1 is equal to 42. We have to neglect the element which already we have find the smallest element, so we will neglect this element. Next is 11 minus 1 is 10, 98 minus 1 is 97, 65 minus 1 is equal to 64. So we know that this is the smallest difference between all the elements with the smallest element, so definitely 2 is our answer. Now the important part of the solution is how to code it. So to code, there's no like compulsion of any languages you want to use. So you can use any of the language which you're comfortable in. For the simplicity, I'll use Java here because the simplistic language and it's my preference. So first we have to decide what will be the input and output. So as we know, we want to return the first and the second last element. So we can say the input would be a list of elements. So my function will look something like it would be a list of integer get two smallest input could be an array or it could be a list. So let's say we take an array. So first is the negative test cases. We should see that if a dot, if this length of the array is less than 2, we'd return null. So this means that there's no solution exists. So we can either return an empty list or we can return a null. So it's upon us what we want to return. You can ask the interviewer what they want as an output if the array length is less than 2. So this edge cases you have to filter out first. Now finding the smallest element. So let's take min is equal to taken is a max value. So this is basically dot length plus. If a of I is less than min, then we just update the min. This would be f I. So by this loop, we'll get an, sorry, by this loop, we'll get an the smallest element, the minimum element. So now my goal is to find the second minimum element. So let's say I again so this is the second min element now we are finding. So we take diff as some maximum value. So I'm not very worried about this syntax errors. So I'm just, for the demo purpose, I'm not very worried about it. So now I'll again iterate. I'll use the same for loop. If I is not equal to min and a of a of I minus min, and we basically need the mod of it. So basically need use the math.mod function here. So we need the modulus of it basically. So math.mod of ai minus min is less than diff. So we have to update two things in this case. So my if ai is not equal to minimum, like it means that the current element is not the minimum element, and the difference of the minimum element minus current element is less than the current difference. So it means that we update the difference here. Difference is this thing, and second min is equal to basically the current element if it satisfies this condition. So basically after these two for loops, I have the minimum and second minimum. So what I want to do is I just need to create a list of integers. We can say it output. Put that at minimum and Now we have to just return the output basically. So this is how you code the solution. So let's once again take is in dry run. So this is a list of input we have supplied, and it's basically an array, and we want a list of outputs, which is the minimum and the second minimum element. First we check if the length of the array is less than 2, it does basically return null or an empty list. Now the first thing we did is we find the smallest element. How we find the smallest element? By running a loop from first element to the last. Once we have the smallest element, the idea is to find an element whose difference with the minimum element is the least. So how we did it, we have maintained a variable second minimum, which initially we get the maximum value. Similarly, for diff, we get the maximum value. And now we iterate through the array. We find that the current element is not the already find minimum element and is different with the minimum element is less than diff. So in that case, we'll update the diff and we'll update the second minimum as the current element. Now, after running this whole loop, we'll get the second minimum element. Now, once we have the minimum second minimum element, we'll make a list as an output. We'll add those two elements and return those output. So now the point is, what is the time complexity of this solution? And the time complexity is basically we are traversing this array 2 times. So it's basically on plus on, which is again an on. So the time complexity of this solution is basically on. So we came from O log n to on. So this is how you have to approach to the interviewer. That first you give the brute force solution, then you discuss what the possible approaches. Now you give something which is better than the previous solution, which will be more optimal in terms of space and time complexity. Now at the end you can just have a dry run of this of your input with the function and show them within any of the examples. So this is how you approach the questions asked in the interviews. So that is it for today, and I'll be posting more videos regarding arrays and list, hash maps, and other basic interview questions which are asked in the companies. And stay tuned, and please subscribe to my channel. I'm putting a lot of efforts to make these videos, and hope I'm making some sense to you. And I'm starting with very basic questions right now, and once you people suggest me, I'll add more complex problems.